Hello, and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. Tonight we are joined by Teri Brown. Hi, Teri, and welcome to the room. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, I'm delighted to have you here. Now, I know we were talking just a tad bit before the show started, and you mentioned you have a podcast. Do you want to give a plug in for that?
Oh, I would love to. Thank you for the offer.
Well,
I
you're
am
welcome.
host of I'm host of Online for Authors, and it is a podcast where if you are looking for your next book to read, this is the place to come. I read indie author books, and once I've read them, we have a nice discussion. I never give away an ending, but I give you just enough information that you'll just be dying to read that next book.
Oh, that's awesome. I've written 15 myself, but I am so not everyone's cup of tea. So I never push them because it's like this. You either love me or you totally hate me. And I'm okay with it. Um, you, I take it as a compliment if you hate me too, because I had one. It was a long time ago. This is how long I've been writing. I'm in my 50s. But I had one that came out and she gave me 5 paragraphs on the book. Okay. Just like, if I could have been tore up, I would have been shredded. Just 5 paragraphs. But then the last one was like, so where's book 5?
Oh, how funny.
I know. So you either love me or hate me, and I'm okay with that because hate, it takes a lot to hate someone. And if you've read my books entirely, you know what I mean? That's kind of a compliment in itself. So
I
I'll
think
live with
so. I saw a meme one time where someone wrote, "You're the worst author that I've ever known." And the author writes back and says, "So you know me."
it. That's fun. Yeah, I like that. I should put that on a shirt. So I want to start off tonight. Just backing it up a little bit, you had a debut book called Snowflowers Beneath the Snow. Now, you published this in 2022. Now, I know that you've published more before this, but I don't want to go too far back because I have a question on that
Right.
as well. But this was kind of more of your fiction. So tell me a little bit about how the creation of this first book, as far as the fiction, came about.
Yeah, it's called Sunflowers Beneath the Snow. I had a friend who's Ukrainian. She told me an incredible little story, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, that can't even be real." And I thought that maybe we were having just a communication issue because English is not her first language. And so
Mhm.
I asked a lot of questions, and it was what I thought it was. And I thought, man, this needs to be a book or a movie. And that was in 2016. And I wrote that manuscript in 2018, but was terrified to let anyone see it or even know that I was writing. And so it was 2022 before I finally got it out into the world. But I tell everyone that she told such an incredible story that I wrote 82,000 words of fiction to tell 3 pages of truth.
Oh, wow. Wow. Can you give us just a touch of what the story is?
Yeah, so it follows 3 generations of Ukrainian women. It starts in the
Mhm.
1970s. It goes through until Russia invaded Ukraine the first time in 2014. Um, what's really incredible is this book came out 4 weeks before the current Ukrainian crisis.
Mm.
So I had a lot of people say to me, "How did you know?" And it was like, "Oh, that's not the way it works." I had no idea that was going to happen. But the fun thing about this book is it helps, especially people in the United States who don't know a lot about, what's going on in other countries, to
Mm.
understand what is happening there and the fact that what's going on between Russia and Ukraine has been going on a long time. This is not something new that started in 2022. This is something that's been going on for generations.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. There are so much things. I watched a video once, and this became more so. I have an Asian fascination. I love all the subtitled movies and everything. I can't get enough. Okay, maybe it's because like reading the book on the screen. I don't know, but I'm in there. Okay, I love it. Um,
Right?
so but I've always had a fascination, and when, TikTok went down, we all went over to, I believe it was called Red Note, and I only say
Uh-huh.
this because, we hear so much things about other countries and other people, but then when you finally are able to interact, even watching the text shows, like I was telling you, the text movies and series and all the
Right.
stuff that I'm into, you still I mean, yes, you're getting a highlight of a people, but you don't really understand or know them until you start to speak with them. And I found that
Exactly.
yeah, right. I find it completely fascinating. And when you were actually speaking with people and you actually had to take time because I bought one of those little pens with the decoders and all that stuff so you could take your time and actually type it in and listen to what they're actually saying in their native language. And it is fascinating. There's so many stereotypes you think you have about a culture or a race, um, are not necessarily the entire picture or even the picture at all once you start
Well,
diving deeper in it.
what's really crazy is this last book that I wrote is about my tandem bicycle ride across the United States.
Mhm.
And you would think that as someone who has lived in the United States pretty much her whole life, I was born in Athens, Greece, because my dad was in the Air Force, but all of my memories are here in the United States. And I still learned things about the United States and people that I didn't
Mhm.
understand or that I would have thought was not true. You figure we rode across the United States during the summer of 2020. So that was COVID summer and it was political unrest summer. And if you listened to the news, you would have thought that the whole world was going to hell in a handbasket. And what it turned out was we found amazing individuals who were more than willing to chat with us, help us when we needed help, who were giving and loving, and it was amazing. It was so eye-opening. So I understand what you're saying. As you get to meet people, you recognize that those stereotypes that you have, you need to throw those out the window because people we're more alike than we are different.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that. And even one particular person, either in any kind of culture or country, you can't generalize one based on the whole, you know what I mean? Because, I
Absolutely
mean,
not. Right.
yeah, we have some here now, which I won't go into any kind of, you know what I mean? But we have some here now, I'll be like, "Oh my goodness." So,
Right, right,
please
and you don't want other people to generalize you
no.
over one or two or even 10 or 15 individuals. You want to be known for who you are. And
Yes.
yes, so when we took that ride, it was so refreshing to recognize that when you focus on the things that make you similar, the things that make you unsimilar don't seem to matter quite as much. Like you realize that people are people. They get up in the morning, they go to work, they want happiness, they want a loving family. I mean, everybody's kind of after the same kind of thing, and I think that's true regardless of what country you're in, that some of these stereotypes, I don't know why they exist, but they're not very helpful.
No, they're not. Now, um, you made a couple of references. I'm gonna go out of my order of your questions just because we
Okay.
mentioned it. So I'm gonna put a little check here to make sure I don't re-ask it. But you just mentioned your book when you were going across country, and for those who are
Right.
listening, it's also the title of our room, Double Butted Adventures. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, so it's 10 little rules for a double-butted adventure.
Nice. So tell us a little bit. Now, this is the latest one. This got published.
Yeah.
What
It's
date did you push?
it actually is going out on the 14th, so it's in pre-order right
Ah,
now.
pre-order.
And
Okay.
it's in pre-order right now, but a week from now it's going to be out there. Um, so my husband and I decided to ride across the United States on a tandem bicycle. The reason was my husband has wanted to ride across the United States on a bicycle since 1976. He heard of this group of college students who did it for the bicentennial. He was all in. He wanted to do that. I had recently gotten out of a really bad relationship. It was 14 years of emotional abuse, and I didn't feel like I had a lot of worth or value, and I didn't think other people felt that I did. And I wanted to do something big and bold. And when he talked about riding across the United States, we were dating, and I thought, I want to do that. I would do that with him. And so we started this process. And what's crazy is at that time, I had not been on a bicycle in 40 years.
Oh.
So, so this wasn't like in my wheelhouse. This was well outside. I tell people I'm a desk jockey. I, I like, I like to be outdoors, but walking along the beach collecting shells kind of outdoors, not this kind of outdoors. So this was a huge endeavor for me. And we decided to raise money for Toys for Tots. My husband is a 25-year veteran from the Marines, and it
Mm.
was like, okay, if we're going to do this big thing, let's raise money. And so we did for Toys for Tots. But when we were finishing up, so it was 3,102 miles, and as we are coming the last half mile, he points out the flag that's on the memorial. I start to laugh and cry and laugh and cry. I was a mess. And I said to myself, oh my gosh, I made it the whole way across the United States. I can do anything I put my mind to. It's no longer a matter of, can I? It's a matter of what do I want to do? And that's when I said, I want to be an author. And 14 months later, I was able to get Sunflowers Beneath the Snow out to the public.
Now, that's interesting that you bring that up about the sunflowers because prior to your debut novel, now this is some fiction that you wrote, right? The debut.
Yes.
Okay. You wrote, I think it's four other books. Am I saying that
Yeah.
correctly? And
Yes. So
nonfiction, or was it five? I think it's
it was
five,
five.
right?
It was
Yeah.
five, and they were nonfiction. But I tell everyone, those for me, I was contracted, so
Mhm.
they paid me my one fee for writing it, and that was the end of that. And for those books, it was more about research. Can I research the facts, and then can I place them in the book in a manner in which someone will find pleasing and helpful? So it wasn't a lot of creativity. It wasn't a lot of me. It was things
Mm.
about like, how to buy your first home, how to put your home up for them on the market, how to those kinds of things. And they were fine, don't get me wrong, but they didn't require anything of me personally. It was, can I do good research? And the answer is yes. And do I understand how to lay out a book in such a way that if someone is looking for that kind of help, that this book will be helpful?
Yeah.
But while I was doing those books, I really, really wanted to write fiction. But I was in that horribly abusive relationship, and there was no safe place to land. There was,
Mm.
like you put yourself out there on the line when you're writing your own characters and your own stories and people who don't like your books. And I couldn't have handled that.
Mm.
I was already I already didn't believe in myself. There was no way that I was going to put something out there so more people could agree with my abusive husband that I was no good. And so it wasn't until I got out of that relationship that I began writing.
Right. It's a hard sell, and I don't I putting yourself out there is like, I don't know, it's like walking naked in the streets.
It
I
is.
mean,
It
it
is.
really is. And I understand this completely what you're saying. I mean, not so much of the relationship scenario and stuff. I feel for you on that because that's very hard to have to deal with. I've been married. Oh, he's in the room, so he's gonna hear of this. I think it's 32 years. I'm horrible at that because he's in our chat room here tonight. So um, I think I think it's 32. I could be wrong. But I'm horrible. I usually can get it confused if it's June or July too. So it's somewhere. It's one of those J months that we got married. So I don't have that so much as that, but um, I will say that writing, that's what I have familiarity with what we're talking about, um, is a very lonely. You can circulate with other authors as much as you want, but it's a very lonely adventure. You know what I mean?
It is.
Or
Yeah,
indenture, I should say.
yeah.
Um,
I mean,
because
you
you
you can't really write with someone else. I mean, that's an alone thing. Your editing is an alone thing. And then
yeah.
as you're putting your book out into the world, when you get feedback on it, even if there's someone else standing there with you, it's your soul
Mhm.
that takes either the wow, this is fantastic, or takes the hit, you know? And I
Well,
just yeah,
and
it
the
was too scary for me to do that when I was in a situation where I was already not feeling good about myself.
Yeah. And and to put yourself out there, the reference I was trying to make, like I said, from the side that I can speak on, but I can't imagine putting yourself out there as a writer if you don't have a supportive
Exactly.
yeah, if you're not around people that are supporting you because I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, my mother has always liked my work, okay, but you can't just tell everybody, "Hey, my mommy likes this book. Why don't
Right,
you?"
right.
That doesn't kind of work. But so you're always looking for that supportive you know what I mean, reinforcement to be able to balance out. And but I've noticed, I mean, like again, like I'm not saying that I don't get it, but I've noticed just from my own life that the big and I spent a couple years in therapy. I'll put that out there. So I have my own baggage, okay? But
Right,
I have
right.
learned I've learned one important thing is that and maybe this has to do with my age and being married for a very long time and all that stuff that adds into everything. But I think you have to give that reassurance to yourself and say, screw it to everyone else and everything. And that
Yeah,
whether or not whatever it is, and it doesn't have to be writing, it can be any kind of thing that you're willing to step out there for. Even your self-worth, even your beauty, even your charisma, your talent, you have to see it in yourself first. If you don't, that makes it it enables anyone else to see it. Does that make sense?
right. No, absolutely. In fact, I have been doing some marketing classes with some local authors. And the first thing I tell them is you have to be able to say and mean, I am an author and I
Mhm.
write good books. And
Yes.
if you can't say that,
Mhm.
no one else is going to believe it. I
Well,
don't care
trust
what
me.
marketing you do.
Oh, yeah, trust me, I get it. I'm my biggest fan. I go back and read my own
Right?
stuff, and I'm like, "Dang, that's good."
That's good. I tell people that you have to be willing to stand on the table and dance with your book naked. Like, here I
Yeah.
am, like, see the book. And I
Mm.
think that's a real hard thing for authors to to grasp is that idea that, you have to be able to say, I am an author and I write good books. And
Well
it's just part of it. Like if you can't do that, it's going to be a very scary journey for you.
I'm gonna throw Laura under the bus, and she's in the room with. This is Laura is my partner in crime. Some people say personal assistant, but I call her my partner as far as everything work related. We're in it together. But um, when Laura started with me, I was like, and at that time we were still figuring things out. Now we kind of work more in coalition to the podcast, but before when it was the books and everything else, I was like, all right. So if you're gonna work with me, you got to read my books because what I told you in the beginning, you either love me or you totally hate me.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, so it was kind of a sink and swim kind of thing, but yeah, she said, yeah, she did that.
She did
Yeah,
say
I
that.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sent them to her too. I sent all my books to her. I went through Amazon and I sent them all to her. And I'm like, okay, first mission, go for the biggest one first. If you can get through that and you don't hate me, then we're a shoe
But
in.
she just said the book. The joke's on you because she loves your books. So that's what she,
Yeah, yeah. I know. I love her. We've been working together now for 4 years straight. And although my writing has backburned, I do have some work that I haven't finished. So, but she's here more for other reasons now too. It's not so much just the books. I mean, that's a passion for me. But I think you just
right,
really have to love what you do. And I think something very important, like when we were talking about burying ourselves up to open to criticism. I think the thing is to step
right.
back from it. You have to step back.
Yeah,
I used to go and read the reviews and be so involved with it that it would drive me crazy. So I think the best thing, if I were to give anyone advice on that kind of stuff, it's great to get criticism for your peers. Make sure it's someone that you trust. Make sure it's not someone who's gonna kiss your butt and say, "I love all of it." You know what I mean? You don't want that
right,
either.
right.
Um, but I think it's important to pick someone you trust and that you respect. Probably someone who's peer or like Laura. Laura has read extensively. She is sought out by authors you would not believe. They're always wanting to work with her, and I'm like, tough, she's mine. So,
Here's mine. Go find your own Laura, right?
right. Well, Laura does work with other people. She's not technically just mine. I wish that you know what I mean, that I had her on that kind of level, but um, she's read extensively. So if you're going to work with someone, you want to partner yourself someone along those lines so that they can give you honest feedback. I mean, don't get me wrong,
Exactly.
I'm the wrong person when I'm editing because I really don't want to hear it. But it's like, no, you don't know me, Laura. You don't know me.
Right.
I'm a horrible
I
editor.
think
I
I think
really am.
having your well, I think having your book edited is one of the hardest things. Um,
Oh,
it
yes.
it's almost like turning your English paper in and it comes back and it's full of red lines and things and your first thought is
Yes.
what, that's my baby, like what are you doing tearing
Yes.
it apart. But I
Yes.
have learned, and now I actually love the editing process because I've recognized that although it may be a little difficult for me to look at it and see the truth, it is usually true. And I do need help in these areas. And isn't it wonderful that I have someone on my side who's willing to tell me, Terry, this is a good book and it can be a great book if you'll go do this.
Mm. Yeah.
There's this hole here. And wouldn't it be really good if you fix this hole before we put it out in the public? And most of the time it's things I would never have recognized on my own because I know the whole story inside and out and I know my characters and I know everything that's supposed to happen and I've failed to tell you something but I haven't recognized it because I assume you know everything I know.
Yes. I think we do that in real life too.
Yes,
Sometimes I say it in my head and just automatically think somebody else knows it. We
right,
had nieces
right.
and nephews for Christmas. And because I had talked about it enough with a few people, family that live here, because my mother has an apartment across from my she shed and my husband. So I think I just said it enough. I just assumed that the kids knew. And they were like, so when was this? So
Right,
I think it's the
right.
same thing with the books. I think and I'm really bad at it, when I have it in my head about how a storyline or a character is supposed to be, it doesn't until I go back and start rereading it and be like, "Oh, crap." Then I have to really,
Yeah, I didn't actually put that in there, did I? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Yeah, I get you. I think that's the thing because we get the story. But now let me ask you, when we're talking about writing in general, are you a pantser or a plotter?
I am a pantser all the way. I am a
Well, I knew
hundred
I liked
percent
you.
pantser. I have tried so hard to be something else. I have tried
Mhm.
several different outlining and plotting things. Each and every time I run into a wall, my characters refuse to play with me anymore, and I sit there in a stupor until I give it up and try again and do it
Yes.
my way. And and it's funny because in my Personal life, I am a planner. I
Mhm.
like a list. I know what I'm going to do every day. I love to cross it off the list. I don't like to be spontaneous. I tell everyone, "Oh, I love spontaneity as long as you let me plan for it. You want me to be spontaneous? Let's do that on Saturday at 10." I mean, I'm a planner, but when it comes to my creativity, nope. Nope. And then what's funny is on this trip that we took on our tandem bicycle ride, I tried to be the planner, and it doesn't work that way. You can't plan
Mm.
for what you don't know is coming. You don't know how bad the hills might be. You don't know what the weather's going to be like. You don't know that you're going to have a bad night's sleep in the tent and you're not going to have the ability to go that many miles. You can't plan on when your flat tires happen. You can't plan on when there's going to be road construction. There's all of these things. And I had to learn to just do the day,
Mhm.
just do the day, and then tomorrow we'll do tomorrow. And so it's almost like my creativity and that trip were the same in so many ways, in which you just have to like go by the seat of your pants and see what the day brings you.
Right. So now you make up a good example. Well, I should say you're making a very good example about pantser and plotter because I've done both. I
Yeah.
am so much the way you are. I'm a pantser, and I've told this in previous podcasts that I've had with other artists and authors that come on. Um, I think for me, being a pantser is because it's like reading a book I want to read about a subject I want. And every day that something else is put down the paper, it's like, "Oh, oh, that's good." And I'm so much more excited about the book being finished
Yes.
because I don't know how it's going to end. And when I get the ending in my head, this is where I'm the worst. This is where I am the worst. Once I know in my head where the ending is, I find it very hard to finish the book every time.
Oh, and so what happens to me is my editor will can almost point out, and she'll say, "This is where you figured out the ending, isn't it? You started
Mhm.
rushing it.
Yeah.
Stop rushing the
Yeah.
ending." And it's like, but
Yes.
I already know what's going to happen now. I already
Yep.
know. Yeah. So I'm usually like, most of my books are in the range of like 80,000 words, and I'm usually
Mhm.
60,000 words in before I have any inkling of where it's actually going to end. And my friends who are plotters are like, "Oh, how do you do that? That would scare me to death." And it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
but I don't know. When I try to write with an outline, my characters look at me and say, "I'm not doing that." Like, are you out of your mind? I would never do that. That's not going to work for me. And they just refuse to play.
Right. I like I said, I love to write, but I'm where it's all consuming. Like, I have a laptop. I'm not an 80,000 word writer. I'm more like that novella person that, I 40,000 is usually my go-to. But I do have a very big book that all my small books ended up into in a series that became a very big book. But typically, I'm the novella. Does that drive you crazy? When you read yourself, do you prefer the big I'm sorry, novels comparison to the novellas?
I don't, I'm sorry, I have a little bit of a virus. And so all of a sudden I
Oh,
got
that's
choked
alright.
up. So let me
I
try
heard you.
again.
That's
No,
I heard you. That's why I
yeah,
was trying to keep going.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry
No,
about
you're
that. That's so
fine.
rude, but
You're fine. Oh, no,
I
you're
couldn't
fine.
stop it. Okay.
That's fine. That's why I kept talking
That's
just to
part of being
kinda
live.
That's right, it
Right.
is.
So no, I think for me, if the story is good, the characters are good, I don't really care about the length when I'm reading. The only thing that bothers me about novellas is I want more. It's like, oh, that was a
Yeah,
really good story. Where's more? But you have so many written that
yeah,
someone can then go grab more. So that
right.
that part wouldn't be the issue for me. So no, I don't mind reading novellas.
I
I'm too wordy. I don't know how to write a novella. Like I wrote a short story and was really shocked that I could do it because
wow.
I want to develop these characters like we have to go all the way back to, the day they were born and I don't know. I just have trouble being short. I mean, think about this. You asked me a question. I've been talking for 3 minutes. I don't know how to keep things short.
No, well, I kind of wish that I had that problem. I have to say, my very first book, and I'm not trying to word myself up, but I am very horrible in reading lulls. Like when, you know what I'm talking about, the lulls where you get so much
Yes,
backstory. My eyes
right,
start to
right,
glaze over. My eyes
right.
glaze over. If it's too much of a lull where I'm reading too much back, I have to start. I love books with action. I love having the action pulling me in right off the bat. And
I
so,
like to write the backstory as like
yeah,
in small tidbits.
as the
Like
story's evolving.
as the
Yes,
story's evolving and you find
yes,
out this fact and then you find out this.
yes.
And now sometimes I do have the tendency to what my editor calls wander in the woods,
Ah,
which
wha-
which is I've not gotten to the story. I'm over there wandering around. I'm telling you things. And why is this important? Get out of the woods, get back to the story. And so I have to go back sometimes and say, okay, this piece here, I want it, but it can't be this way.
mhm,
How else am I going to get this information? I need this information for them to have it. But the way it is, I wandered in the woods for too long. They're not going to be part of the story anymore. They've all gone to sleep. How am I going to bring this in? So I do have the tendency to do that, but then I have to go back and rein it in and say, okay, now what do I really need to do with this? So
yeah. I I did my very first book was only like 15,000 words. I did it on a call out and I wrote more on it. That's how it became the big book. Um, but there were short stories it was for a series. So I don't want to say short stories, but they were short takes, you know what I mean?
right,
So it was 15,000.
right, right,
I think the next one was 20 or 30 and then went up to 40 and then they all became into the same book. Um, but when I did the very first one, it was the first experience I'd ever had with a publisher. And well, an editor of the publishing. This is back when Amazon did
right,
all that. Do you remember that?
right.
Um,
No, I don't.
they had
I don't
oh,
because
yeah, that's right.
I was not an author until 2022. So
Okay, well, that tells you how old I am. Okay. All right. Um, but back
I'm
when I
older than you. I just got started later.
well, we'll just play that I'm the old one. We'll go with that. It's fine. Uh,
Okay.
it's okay. Um, so when I first started, it was with Amazon. It was their side company, and I can't remember. I think Create Space or something like that. I might be getting that wrong, because it's been a little while, and we don't use it anymore, obviously.
Right.
But when I
Right.
was doing it, they offered an editor and all that stuff, and you had to pay for it. You didn't get it for
Right.
free. You
Right.
get segments. They would give you book covers and all this other stuff that you could implement them to do. Well, my very first book, I chose an editor, and it was my first experience with it. And one thing she did say to me, and I kept the paper, I printed it out because she sent me an email, and I
Right.
kept it because it was the biggest compliment I've ever gotten about my work and my life. Is when we talk about laws. And I'm very bad because my husband gets on me on this one. He says I don't give enough um, backstory, you know.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? 'Cause some people really
Yeah.
love that. Some people love chapters upon chapters of backstory. I don't. I don't. I'm not that person. I like you, when I do the laws, I try to implement them into the story as we're going along if it deals with what's happening in the story, and so you wanna bring that back to point, you know?
Right.
Um but she told me that she said for it, and I'm paraphrasing because 'cause I'm sure I'm not gonna get the exact wording here. I should get it out and frame it. That's what I should do. Anyways, it's probably the only real compliment I've ever really gotten. But anyways, she said for such a short reads that she was impressed that I was able to give back details in such a way that you didn't realize you were getting them because they went right along with the story. And I took that was
Oh
the
yeah.
best thing that I have ever in my life gotten about my books. Even today, it is the best. No offense, Laura, I
Yeah,
love you.
don't
But
you love
anyways, but it was the best thing that I ever got with my work, and I didn't realize it then. It's now, you know what I mean, as you've gotten further into it, that that
that?
was probably the best compliment I've ever gotten. Um,
Well, what's
but
interesting is now that I'm writing more than one genre. So I've got my historical fiction novels, and now I've got 10 Little Rules for a Double-Butted Adventure out. And, it's creative nonfiction. It's about my life. And I just got a review in which they said that it was a very down to earth and chatty, and never once did it feel like I was talking down to someone or demanding that they accept one of my rules. Like it never felt like I was the authority and everyone else must fall in line. And to me, that's a wonderful compliment, because when you're writing a book that has the word rules in it, people start to wonder, well, am I going to tell them 10 things they have to do to live their life? And the answer is no. I'm telling you 10 things that I learned that helped me in my life. And the
yeah,
hope is that maybe you'll learn something to help you in yours along the way.
I agree, and that's an awesome compliment for your books. Also, you've had
Yeah.
vast amount of compliments. I went to go look at your books on Amazon, and I looked at your website, and you've gotten multiple awards on a lot of your books. One specifically, I think it was 10
Yeah.
awards you got for the very first book, Sunflowers Beneath the Snow.
Yeah.
I think you had 10, right?
Yeah. 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 Actually, I think it ended up at 12.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it's been crazy. I've since, now I have the three books out, this fourth one coming out, and I'm not sure, but I'm somewhere up around 60 awards across those books.
Wow. That's
So,
awesome. Now,
yeah.
do you have a writing room you're putting all these up? Do you have an office that these are going on the wall?
I do have an office, but a lot of them just send you a digital seal. So I guess what I should do is print those all out and then just have them all over my wall. That would be
Oh,
something. I hadn't thought of that.
you
Thank
know
you.
you know what you should do, and it would be infinitely awesome, and they're not that expensive. Hit me up, or I'll put it in our pod match, text to each other.
Okay.
Um, but you put them on a canvas and actually get them framed,
Oh, yeah.
and that
Oh, that
makes it
would be
look
cool, wouldn't it?
yes, I that looks so professional. My father passed, and then this past year, my sister passed, and Um, I wanted to do something special and memorable for them, and I put their pictures on canvases and then had them framed, and they looked as if you've gotten them professionally done, like you originally had the pictures
Yeah.
done, and you know what I mean, and they painted it on a canvas, all depending on what kind of texture you're going with, but it really
Yeah.
gives a great impact, it really does. Also,
Yeah, I can.
what I've go ahead.
No, 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 I was just going to say I can see that all across, like you could almost make like a border all the way around the office. That would be really cool.
Yes,
So,
and
good idea. Good idea.
you can do smaller ones that don't cost that much, um,
Right, right.
and you can do, like, the little 8 by 5s if they don't cost that much. They're a couple, I think the most I ever spent on one was for the small ones, you know what I mean, was maybe 15
Yeah.
bucks, because every time I have published my book, I have printed the cover on a canvas, and
Oh,
so
how
they just, like
fun.
yeah, they just look like little books in my, she shed out here, so I have them on the wall. They just look like little books, but they're how they what I'm talking about with the canvas around
Yeah,
the frame and
yeah, yeah.
everything. Yeah, and so they just look like little books on your walls, and I love that, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. That sounds fabulous.
Well, so for my last question of the evening, I had a few more, but we just went and we just talked like it was no other, and I love it.
Well,
Um
you said we were supposed to feel like we were just sitting down and having coffee together,
I
and I think
know,
we've
I did
managed that. So,
I know, and I love it. I really do. I was just making a joke because I didn't get some of the questions I wanted to get because we kind of trailed off. But I think that's awesome. I love being able just to sit down with someone, like you're just having a cup of coffee. Sometimes I have coffee in here, even this evening. I'll be up a while, but that's all right. It's worth it. So, what we were talking, oh yeah, the only questions I had was to the extent of the other books, and we didn't get to those. So I now I
Okay.
have to have you back so we can dive deeper into the other stories you've written. But for
Well,
my
that would be
last
great.
question, oh, I would love that because I feel bad, but I've enjoyed the conversation so well. I've kind of went off my question, so my apologies to you and to all those that are listening. But we'll have you back, I guarantee it, because I'd love to dive a little bit deeper, especially into the how-to books too, because I still think that's great. Even though, like I said, you had a more creative calling, I still think that's awesome that you were able to do 5 books prior to letting your creative outlet go out.
Yeah.
So I think those
Yeah.
are awesome. So what's next? What's coming next? What great big thing are we working on right now?
So I'm actually working on two things right now. I have a children's story that came to me while I was riding across the United States. And I have a granddaughter who said to me, Gigi, when are you going to write a book for me? So I have that written. I finally have the illustrations done. I've been working with an illustrator. So I hope to have that book out late spring. And then the book that I'm writing right now is a complete change of pace from everything that I've ever done. And I tell people I don't like to be put into a genre box where you say this is the only thing you can write. So I've got my
Mm,
historical fiction. I'm going to have a children's book. I have a short story in an anthology. I have this creative nonfiction, My 10 Little Rules for a Double Butted Adventure. And now I am writing a contemporary women's fiction that's humor, and it is a tongue-in-cheek look at a woman going through menopause.
oh my
And
God.
it is,
Welcome to my world.
and it's just, yeah, and it's just funny, and it's meant to be funny. It's meant to be able to laugh at, the fact that you have the night sweats, or that, you can't find your glasses which are on top of your head, or for the
Mm.
third time this week you put your phone in the refrigerator. Those kinds of things where you just, and I want to be able to laugh at it, and I also am hoping maybe to shine a little bit of a light on the fact that there is a medical bias against women, that when you go
Oh,
in with some of these issues and you say, gosh, my hips, why are my hips hurting? And the answer is pat pat pat, that's normal, or you're just getting old, or are you hormonal? And all of
mm,
those questions that you get. And so I want to shine a little bit of a light. I like to try to have some social issues. Most of my books look at like xenophobia, a little bit of racism, those kinds of things, just because I
yeah.
like to look at what's really happening in the world in the past and now. So I think that's
Ugh.
what I'll do with that one, is shine a little bit of a light there. But mostly it's just going to be funny. It's a very, she's me. She's kind of this, a little bit sarcastic and flippant, and looking at herself, and she's out there trying to date again, and life is, on this very first date she's trying to go on, she has a hot flash 15 minutes before she leaves, and she ends up soaking wet and has to change her clothes and the whole 9 yards. So, yeah.
Terry, we're going to have to definitely book a date because, quite frankly, what you just said, part of our podcast too is like I like to talk about women's issues as well. And you and
Yeah.
I going through the menopause, I'm assuming that we're close in our ages. We're probably both in our 50s, yes?
I'm actually 61.
Well, we're going to put you in your 50s because you sound too young for that. So we're going to put you closer to me.
Well, thank you.
You're
I,
welcome.
I love you now. You're my new best friend.
Well, like I said, I've got carried away. I forgot half my questions. We were just talking so good. But I would really love to have you back, and I'll tell you why. How quick are you finishing with this book? Is it going to be later into this year?
I would love to have it come out this year. I am about was another experiment of trying to write with an outline, and it didn't go well, and I got backed into a hole. My husband also recently passed away, and so
Oh,
I kind of got like stuck. But I have some writing retreats planned coming up, and my hope is that late fall, maybe in time for Christmas, that I can get this book out.
oh, well, you know what? Let as soon as we do through pod batches, we'll have to put the link in and finish this particular podcast. But why don't we set you a date for the end of this year and
Oh, I think that's great.
come back, and even if the book isn't finished, that's fine. We can talk about what you have on it. And I would love to dive deeper and talk about women's health if you would like to. And just
I
because you
would
and I are so
love
close
to.
in age, we could talk about just the stuff that we go through, how people view that, and maybe some things that we can do to help other people. So you know what I mean? So they don't have the same
Yeah,
handicaps and hung up things that we went through ourselves.
I think that sounds fabulous.
Well, great. I would love to have you back. And my deepest condolences for your loss.
Oh,
That's a
thank
very
you.
hard one.
Thank you.
That's a very hard.
It is hard.
It is. Like I said, I lost my father. It's going to be 2 years, and we just lost my
Uh-huh.
sister like this last year. And it's I can't imagine with a spouse. I mean, I can only imagine because my mother, she lives across from me, but that's a hard one. That really is. And I'm very sorry to hear that.
It is hard, and this book that's coming out, this was the ride he and I took together. And
Yeah.
so talking about it, I was afraid maybe I would not be able to do it.
Mm.
It was a little scary to say I'm going to get out there and I'm going to talk about this book. But what I have found is that he was diagnosed with brain cancer in June of 2022, and June of 2022, and was given 8 months, and he lived for 31.
Mm.
And but through all of that, you start to focus more and more and more on when he was sick. And I was having problems remembering him as the healthy, vivacious, amazing man that I married. And now that I'm talking about this book again and talking about our ride across the United States and all the things that we did, it's been a wonderful therapy. It has helped me really pull all those memories back, and I feel like I'm honoring him by being able to put this book out now. So it's turned out to be both sad and difficult and wonderful.
That's very poignant. That is I wish I'd had that analogy for myself and losses that we went through because that is so true. Because you're there at the end of everything going on, sometimes we hold on to that. So I think
Yeah,
writing the book, I mean, maybe even journaling it, for some people, you know what I mean? To take time to write
yeah,
those special memories down from your past and be like because if we start living just those good memories, that's all we'll remember. You
yes.
know what I mean? The
Well, and the not so good, the end when you're fighting cancer and it's beating you, and the doctor's appointments and the medical equipment and all of that. You don't want to remember that, because
no.
that wasn't my husband. That was cancer. Right? And I don't
Yeah.
want to remember cancer. I want to remember Bruce. So getting to talk about this amazing ride that we took, 3,000 miles across the United States, and all of the funny stories and all of the things that I learned about myself and life while on that trip, it's been it has really been wonderful to be able to express that to other people, and to be able to really honor who he was, because this really does explain who he was as an individual, and then how he helped me to grow and become that individual that I wanted to be but had been too afraid to be.
Yeah. That is wonderful. Thank you so much, Terry. You've actually given me
You're
more to
welcome.
think about. um,
There
that
may be
is
a third podcast in there. You never know.
We're gonna have to do segments.
Yes, yes.
But
And today's
definitely.
segment with Terry Brown.
Definitely, we're gonna get back together. I honestly do, because I would love to dive deeper. I could lose myself in conversation with you. So thank you so much for being on with us tonight.
I want to thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, it was my honor. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I really have. Thank you to Teri, and I want to thank our listeners as well. Until next time, guys. Bye bye for now.